The 8th generation Ford Transit 363 series is very popular in Russia. Yelabuga-assembled cars sell like hotcakes, and managers of Ford showrooms do not hesitate to call Transit the best small-tonnage foreign car in the Russian Federation. Is this really so? Well, let's study a foreign lorry for reliability. The 8th generation Ford Transit was first shown to the public at the 2013 Detroit Auto Show as a global model for the US and European markets. In the second half of 2014, the novelty reached Russia. Moreover, it immediately received a local residence permit. The assembly of cars was mastered by the Solars Ford plant, which is located near Yelabuga. Truck chassis and all-metal vans enter from the conveyor of the plant. From the latter, cutting windows and mounting seats, buses are obtained, and in total more than 170 modifications are offered to the client. It can be ambulances, mobile shops, and any other exotic. Truck versions of the Russian assembly are strictly rear-wheel drive, but the client is allowed to choose the power of the diesel engine, the length of the wheelbase. With vans, things are more interesting. Indeed, in the range there are 3 types of drive at once: front, rear, full. We will also answer a very popular question: what serves as the basis for transit, a ladder frame or a load-bearing body? The answer is the skeleton of trucks is a semi-frame which is docked with the cabin module. The spars of the semi-frame of the closed type are quite light and rigid construction. However, skeptics argue that under bad road conditions, the box profile can crack, but in theory, in practice, Fords usually do not experience severe overloads and outright off-road, and therefore the semi-frame usually lives for a long time. It is also believed that closed-type spars can rust from the inside, but there are actually no such problems, so the only objective drawback is the difficulty in repairing. In the event of an accident, the frame will be easier to replace than to restore. Manufacturers of bodies and superstructures have their own claims. There is no way to stretch the wheelbase, and therefore it is necessary to lengthen the already huge rear overhang, and this only loads the semi-frame and makes the weight distribution suboptimal for all metal vans with a non-load-bearing body. The load-bearing body as a whole is strong. However, in the longest versions on very bad roads, long cracks can crawl along the rear of the body, while repairs are expensive and often useless. It is worth brewing one cleft as another begins to creep nearby. As a rule, areas of docking of the floor and the rear doorway, as well as the attachment points of the rear door hinges, suffer from foci of body disease, but we repeat, this is possible when the car is frankly rolled away. Bodies and cabs are well painted. In any case, chips are inevitable for the front end for a very long time. Resisting corrosion from chips, the hood, roof edge and windshield suffer the most. If the car drives more often on the highway than in the city, it is necessary to change cracked glass almost every season. Plus, after 3 or 4 years of operation, it becomes necessary to polish cloudy headlights. The interior of hard, inexpensive plastic resists wear well at runs of 300,000 kilometers. Buttons, handles, seat upholstery and other parts do not lose their marketable appearance, but the packing sags pretty quickly. After about 150,000 kilometers, the driver usually begins to feel the location of the frame springs with this 5th point. Throughout the release of the model, truck drivers complained about the bare rear wall of the cab, because of which it was easy to see through the lower back in winter. And in 2020, the manufacturer finally heard these complaints, and the buyers of new cars began to offer insulated plastic cab lining as an option. Prior to this, the owners had to do the thermal insulation on their own. And continuing the topic of the microclimate, the preheater is located quite peculiarly behind the left front wheel arch, respectively. All the dirt and reagents fly straight to this place. Naturally sour contacts. Therefore, if a wet hair dryer stops starting, then first of all we check the wiring. The only available 2.2 turbo diesel engine that can produce 125, 136, or 155 horsepower of the most powerful version of the engine, the car just flies, but not for too long. With a run of only 30 to 40,000 kilometers, a terrible thing can happen: piston burnout, as a rule, in the 3rd cylinder. What is the reason? There are several versions here. Version number 1 is an excessive forcing of the motor, and Ford, suspecting this, managed to release several versions of the firmware of the control unit in order to reduce the heat load of the unit. Did it help? It looks like yes. Cars younger than 2019 come for engine overhauls much less often than others, and the most problematic are the 2017 to 2018 cars. In addition, oil nozzles can be blamed for the premature death of powerful diesel engines, which should cool the pistons. The poor design of the nozzle itself, plus dirty oil due to untimely replacement, can make the lubricant jet very weak. Therefore, the service interval is recommended to be reduced to at least 10,000 kilometers instead of the official 20,000, and the masters also strongly recommend using flushing oil for each maintenance in order to thoroughly clean the oil channels. By the way, we were very surprised when we found out that the owners of minibuses go for filters and engine oil to official dealers. The reason for this behavior is that recently the market for consumables has been flooded with fakes, so many agree to overpay for original spare parts and lubricants so as not to risk the health of the motor later. But even such motor care measures do not guarantee record service life. As a rule, the engine takes care of a maximum of 250,000 kilometers, so our advice is to take more modest options, which, however, also like clean oil, albeit less often, but burnt pistons are also found after opening less loaded versions. In the driver's environment, such information diverges quickly, so many refuse to buy light commercial Fords precisely because of the capricious turbo diesel, and there are really enough whims. The high-pressure fuel pump manufactured by Denso is considered to be very durable. However, it does not accept dirty high-sulfur fuel. Therefore, in order to prolong the life of the pump and injectors, only the original fuel filter should be installed. It is noticeably more expensive than the non-original, but it's definitely not worth saving by putting more affordable analogs. Officially, the replacement of the filter element should be carried out as needed, but club services clarify this operation. It is advisable to carry out every 20 to 30,000 kilometers or once a year. With insufficient quality filtering of diesel fuel, the rotary booster pump begins to drive chips, and pieces of metal gradually kill the flow control valve. Floating idle speed means that there are scratches on the fuel pressure regulator spool. Particularly economical owners disassemble a worn-out valve and polish scratches that interfere with work. The rest prefer to pay 5,000 rubles for a new part. In any case, when installing the regulator, it is important to save the sealing ring, as well as to adapt the assembly using a diagnostic scanner. 200 to 300,000 kilometers, the high-pressure fuel pump should depart. To the chain drive of the gas distribution mechanism, it also claims at least about 200,000 kilometers. While the jump of a worn chain rarely happens, the same 200,000 valve hydraulic supports usually work, but as soon as a characteristic clatter begins to be heard from under the hood, the hydraulic lifters need to be changed. This occupation is quite expensive, since the pushers are assembled with pastel and rocker arms with rockers for a circle. The entire repair kit will come out from 20,000 rubles and more, and save yourself more, because if the hydraulic compensator does not hold the weakened rocker during a cold start, then this is the first thing distributor is damaged. For Euro 5 motors, and this is the entire circulation of Russian transits in the oil system, a slide-type pump works on the forums. This unit gives a terrible curse and waters with aerial abuse, since the delicate composite pedals of the pump have a habit of breaking off while the red oil or fixing low lubrication pressure lights up too late. The engine has already managed to undermine its health, so a major overhaul awaits you next. True, in recent years the problem has become much less acute. In any case, cars with ridiculous mileage and oil-starved motors have stopped coming to the service. Apparently Ford engineers have done some work to increase the durability of this unit. However, even a slight rustle from the oil pump is the first sign that this unit needs immediate replacement. Now let's talk about the features of the cooling system. If in the front-wheel drive versions of the Transit the motor is cooled by electric cooling fans, then in the rear and all-wheel drive versions the radiator cooling impeller is installed through a viscous coupling. Over time, and this is after 3 to 4 years of operation or 200,000 kilometers, the clutch usually fails. To replace the node, it is required to disassemble half of the front end. Although they say there are masters capable of performing this operation without removing the plumage. If in Europe rear-wheel drive transits can be ordered with the 10-band automatic, which is installed on a Mustang Sports Coupe, then the Russian versions are equipped with only 6-speed mechanics, and this is a good unit in which even a native clutch disc can run 300 to 350,000 kilometers. True, every 3 to 4 years you will have to adjust the cable drive. A simple operation that will take a maximum of half an hour, but for older specimens, these cables will either have to be replaced or thoroughly cleaned and lubricated. Let's also mention in passing the all-wheel drive system that is sometimes found in transits. If during the previous transit the engineers had to fence a system of 2 clutches on the front axle shafts, now the transmission workers have simplified the system so that there is now only one multi-plate clutch on all-wheel drive vehicles. Due to its rarity, it will take a long time to look for a 4x4 option, because such cars were usually bought by collectors. McPherson strut front suspension is a sore spot in commercial Fords. Before others, the stabilizer struts and wheel bearings are surrendered. Moreover, on the right side they fail for some reason more often than on the left. Original bearings and racks nursed for 50 to 60,000 kilometers, but cost about 3 times more than high-quality counterparts. Accordingly, non-original parts serve much less, but they will cost much less, though here you can't roll all cars with the same brush. Ford has an option called heavy-duty front suspension, which is free for the heaviest versions. This package includes a heavy-duty hub assembly as well as heavy-duty front springs. So they just take care of the voice 50 to 60,000 kilometers, while the usual version is suitable only for megacities where the pit is quite rare. Occasionally there are complaints about the mounting of the rear stabilizer. Some carriers break off the strut mounting bolts, but there is no explanation for this phenomenon. But the reason for the appearance of tuning like an additional air suspension on powerful long wheelbase versions is quite clear. Such transits are often loaded with 3 tons, or even more. Of course, that driving with such an overweight is harmful to the health of the half frame, transmission, and motor. Therefore, if an abnormal air suspension is installed at the back, where conventional springs are supplemented with airbags, this is a sure sign that the car was deliberately overloaded. The different mileage of brake pads in urban conditions is also easily explained, and with regular overload, the friction linings grind off at lightning speed. When a car runs along the track, a set of good pads is enough for 50 to 60,000 kilometers, but in this situation it is surprising that official dealers often do not have the necessary spare parts. An amazing situation, given the popularity of the car, because transits are buying thousands of large marketplaces, and they say that corporate orders for new cars are scheduled for the next 2 years. After the change of generations, the model became more maintainable. Allegedly, many service work can now be done faster. Let's say replacing the rear brake disc will take half the time than before. In addition, the engineers have minimized the number of special tools needed. That is, ordinary heads and keys should be enough for self-repair, but do not believe these tales. For example, to replace the same aforementioned viscous coupling, special keys are needed. The commercial Ford is not far from its passenger counterparts. He loves original spare parts and club service, where they clearly know how to repair cars with a blue oval on the grille.